We're going to tell you 4 stories, and they're 4 stories about how the Barcelona principles have helped save lives. And Alex Aiken sort of alluded to that a little bit today when he talked about 70 women a year in Scotland not losing their lives due to breast cancer, and he tied that to the Barcelona principles. When we started to put this session together, it was originally intended to be sort of an education. As we've gone around the world, Barry, I think, was speaking recently in Warsaw, asked the room, how many people ever heard of the Barcelona principles? And no one raised their hand. So we said, well, okay, we should have a session here that just really is an education. What are these principles and what do they mean? And as we began to put this together, we said, you know, we have 4 of the greatest life-saving and life-changing organizations here at this meeting. Let's focus on how they apply the Barcelona principles, really in effect telling their story about how it affects really people's lives, more so than our industry, if you will. So if you don't know the Barcelona principles, there's 7 of them. They basically lay down a framework of how you approach measurement of communications. They start with goal setting, they end with transparency. They're on the AMEC website. And I'm not going to take a moment longer to go through this. I really want to introduce our panel, and if you'll stick with us an extra 15 minutes, I think you're going to hear 4 stories that, I don't know if it'll bring a tear to your eye, but it'll certainly make you feel good about sitting in this room. So let me introduce our panelists. First up is Soraya Taranto. She is with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Soraya, come on up. We also have, thank you. We also have Arturo Romboli from Mendoza, Argentina. He's at UNICEF. We have Eileen Scheel, who is the head of communications with the Cleveland Clinic. And I'm especially glad, or in particular, I was very worried about not having Eileen here. I don't know if you follow the U.S. news of political appointments, but last week there was a lot of discussion of her boss, Toby Cosgrove, the CEO of Cleveland Clinic, being nominated to head the Veterans Affairs Department, which I think would have an effect on your life. And anyway, I'm glad it all worked out, and he's staying at Cleveland Clinic by his own volition. And finally, Melanie Brooks with CARE International. And you have their bios in your booklets. You've got them here on the screen. The main thing to note is they have, for each of these impressive organizations, the top communications and measurement jobs with those organizations. So with that,
David,
yes,
we
sir.
have 2 measurement experts to bring out.
Yes, we have 2 measurement experts.
We have Mark Den from Moreover and Jerome Scholten from Publistat. Please come up.
And we have 2 measurement experts named, no, anyway, okay. So I promised you 4 inspiring stories, and we're going to let them tell it. Given time, we're going to probably limit this on questions and really ask you to, everybody's going to be at the reception, and to spend time talking to these folks at the reception, at the dinner tomorrow night, in the breaks, et cetera. And thank you for your patience in terms of we had this last-minute juggle with Andre Manning's family plan. So, Soraya.
15 years ago, Bill and Melinda Gates wrote a newspaper article about millions of children dying each year in poor countries from a disease that most people in the United States and in other developed countries don't have to worry about. And this disease was killing 500,000 children a year, and it is rotavirus. They'd never even heard of rotavirus, and they thought that perhaps there was a typo in the article they were reading. But they soon learned that this is one of the main causes of diarrhea. And when children in the developed world get diarrhea, they often die because they don't have access to the electrolytes that children in the developing world often die because they don't have access to electrolytes that children in the developed world take to get better. And so after learning about rotavirus, Bill and Melinda decided that they wanted and could do something to make a difference in the life of children and adults facing rotavirus and other challenges. So they began making grants in global health, also some grants in the Pacific Northwest of the United States and in libraries. And they eventually expanded their giving to include education in the United States and global development. In 2006, their friend Warren Buffett, the famous investor, pledged most of his shares of his firm, Berkshire Hathaway, to the foundation, which doubled the foundation's resources. And he joined the foundation as a trustee, and then in 2008, Bill Gates left Microsoft to work full-time at the foundation. And just a little bit more about the foundation. We're based in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. We have 1,200 active grantees to whom we gave $3.5 billion in 2012. And we have 1,300 employees. Most of us are in Seattle, but we do have employees in our other offices in DC, London, Africa, India, and China. And the driving principle that motivates us at the foundation is that all lives have equal value, and that where you are born should not determine the opportunities you have in life. But we know that many people throughout the world don't have the opportunity to realize their full potential. So this is why we do the work that we do at the foundation. Now, after Warren Buffett became a foundation trustee, he encouraged Bill to write an annual letter. This is something that Warren does for Berkshire Hathaway. And so in 2009, Bill published his first annual letter, the first focused on the foundation's work broadly, and subsequent letters focused on innovation, polio eradication, and measurement. And the 2014 annual letter was a first in that Bill and Melinda co-authored it. And it was also a first because we took a truly integrated approach to measurement of the campaign that we put on associated with the annual letter. We aimed for integration across our various media and social media teams, across channels, and then from everything from perception research to media analysis. And we took a holistic approach to reporting. There were no one-offs, what's going on in social, what's going on over here. We only had all-up reports of the results of the campaign. We felt that the campaign was quite successful, though of course we came away with many learnings, but we felt that our successes were in no small part because our campaign was founded in many of the Barcelona principles. So I'd like to share a little bit about it with you today. And the 2014 annual letter focused on 3 myths that block progress for the poor. 1, that poor countries are doomed to stay poor. 2, that foreign aid is a big waste. And 3, that reducing childhood mortality will lead to overpopulation. And in the spirit of the letter, I've identified some myths about measurement that I think we were able to debunk through our experience with this campaign. So the first myth is that campaign goals are nice to have. We knew that as a result of our campaign efforts, we wanted to see a high volume of traffic to the annual letter website. We wanted to see on-message media coverage in targeted outlets. We wanted to see a lot of social chatter. But are these the things that we were truly aiming to achieve with the campaign overall? Needless to say, we had something a little more ambitious in mind. That is changing perceptions about global health and development issues by addressing some of these key myths. And having this goal of perception change clearly articulated was enormously beneficial in guiding our teams through content creation and in informing our distribution tactics. It was something that we internally referenced continuously throughout the campaign, and we believe it was fundamental in helping us to achieve the outcomes that we did. The second myth is that social is for family and friends, meaning that's how we keep in touch, so it must not be all that relevant when we think about campaign measurement. And this is absolutely flat out wrong. Social media was core to our annual letter campaign, and so it was, of course, equally core to our measurement approach. Our media strategy for launch day was to choose digital-first media properties with strong social sharing capabilities, as we felt this would help drive traffic to the letter. This chart shows the impact of mainstream media articles based on estimated outlet reach and the volume of social shares each of those pieces received. This is just one of many social measures we tracked over the course of the campaign, and altogether they were vital in helping us understand the progress we were making on the road to achieving the campaign goals. The third myth is that more is always better. So eyeballs were, of course, important for us in the annual letter campaign. We assiduously tracked site visits and video view counts. You can see here a couple of the charts that we used to track those 2 elements. And Bill Gates even got in on the act. We're going to watch a clip of a conversation he had with Jimmy Fallon, who's a popular American comedian, on Fallon's show late night.
I want to get the word out for gatesletter.com. How can we help to get people to go to that website?
Well, it'd be great if we could create a viral video.
A viral video. I mean, but it's hard to do stuff like that. I mean, like, it's hard to make a viral video. Like, what would you have in mind?
Oh, maybe something like this. Gatesletter.com. 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 Gatescom. Letter.com. Gatesletter.com.
Go.
Well, what do you think?
We don't have time for that.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Bill Gates, check out gatesletter.com.
So clearly, that piece was hands down about driving visits to the annual letter website, but not for the sole purpose of driving the visit count higher. Rather, we wanted to drive visitors to the site so that they would read the annual letter and, in process, change any misperceptions they might have had about development support for global health and development. So for us, site visits were an important measure of success, but they were absolutely secondary to shifts in audience perception. For all three of the myths that the annual letter addressed, we found that of those individuals who initially believed the myths, this is in the bar on the left that says pre, 100% of these people believed the myths coming in. Only 18% of these people agreed with the myths after consuming annual letter content. And for us, this was the most important measure of success. To close, I'd like to share a clip from a video that was part of this campaign that received nearly 2.5 million views. And it features the scientist and educator Bill Nye, the science guy.
Well, people perceive that the U.S. spends a lot on foreign aid. That if the U.S. budget were $1, a quarter of it is spent on foreign aid. But that's not true. It's less than a penny. It's 0.8% of the federal budget. You can't even cut a coin small enough to represent how much money is spent on foreign aid. It's not that much. Now, this idea that wars or natural disasters, tsunamis, earthquakes kill most of the people, that's wrong. It pales, it's dwarfed by the number of people killed by preventable diseases. This sector represents the number of kids 5 years old and younger that die every year from injuries. This represents the number of kids 5 years old and younger that die every year from non-communicable diseases, cancer, things you inherit. But all of this, most of the circle, is kids dying, 5 years old or younger, dying of communicable, preventable diseases. This is where we can change the world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Soraya, for a great presentation. Thanks, David and Amek, for inviting me to be here today. Can the Barcelona Principles help save lives? I have no idea. It sounds like a bit difficult to answer. What I know is that there are many non-profit organizations that work every day to save the lives of millions of children and women around the world. The organization that we have today with us are just some of them. And we also know that we can do a better job if we communicate better what we do, if we communicate better our work. In UNICEF, as you may know, we are the UN agency that cares for the children. Our mission is to make sure that the rights of the children around the world are realized and that they are put as a priority, not only for the governments, but also for the civil society. We realized last year that we didn't have something very important for our communication work, and that was a communication strategy. So we have been working and communicating our work for more than 60 years, 65 or 67 years, and we never had a global communication strategy. So we started to work on strategy last year that we are launching in the upcoming month, which main goal is to put the rights of the child at the heart of the social and political and economic agenda of every country. So this is like a global goal that we are also aiming to implement at the national level. We have offices in 191 countries, and the challenge for us is to be able to design a global communication strategy that is successfully implemented at the local level. And the specific objective that we identify for this campaign is number one, to be the leading voice for children. So that's a positioning is also related to the brand that we want UNICEF to be recognized as a leading voice for children. Number two is to reach 1 billion people around the world with our message between now and the end of 2017. And number three is to engage 50 million people. So from the 1 billion that we reach with the message, we hope that 50 million will take some action in support of UNICEF. So we have now a global goal, we have specific objectives, but we didn't really know how to measure it or what to do to measure it. So we contacted David in Ketchum, and he helped us to develop a framework, a monitoring and evaluation framework that will help us measure the impact of our work. And everything that we have done for the measurement of the impact is fully in line with the 7 principles of the Barcelona Declaration or Barcelona Principles that AMEC has adopted. So first what we did with Ketchum was to try to identify clearly who the target audience is. Then we defined key objectives for each of the target audiences, and also we defined KPIs to measure the impact of each audience in relation to each of the specific objectives. And finally, we are also trying to identify what are the tools and the mechanisms that we need to be able to measure the impact of our work. In terms of the targets of communication, we will continue working with governments and influencers. They remain as one of our most important focus and target audiences, but we also want to focus on 2 specific groups, and we're talking about millennials, young people between 15 and 34 years old, and also the middle class in every country. So if we go back to the objective that we want to reach 1 billion people and we want to engage 50 million people, after the research that we conducted, we find out that if we focus on 35 markets where the middle class group is growing and also the millennials group is growing, we will be able to achieve our objective. Estimates say that by 2017, 32% of the world population will be millennials, and 1.4 billion of them will live in just 20 countries. And we are talking in countries like Nigeria, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, that in addition to industrialized countries, are now also becoming middle-income countries that will help us reach our target audience. Then for each of the specific objectives, so number one, we also designed some KPIs that will help us measure that specific objective. So for number one, which is positioning UNICEF as a leader or the leading voice for children, we want to measure what is the share of the voice, the quantity and the quality of our communications. So here we're talking about the share of voice on all stories related to children issues, the share of voice on digital media, mainly on Facebook and Twitter, and also the volume of coverage in targeted print and broadcast media in TV and radio. So for objective number 2, which is to reach 1 billion people around the world, our main focus will be to measure the quantity of people reached by our message and the communication actions, and also the number of impressions to target audiences in traditional and digital media. We are doing that by looking at the total impressions to target audience of news online, but also social media, and the number of people that we reach via mobile phone campaigns, and also website traffic, as well as offline people that we reach with our campaigns. To measure objective number 3, which is to engage 50 million people to shape a global movement for children, we will be looking at the quantity of people that we engage with UNICEF content. So that's mainly what we do through the website and also social media. The quantity of people that support UNICEF by taking specific actions, and here we're looking at people that will donate money to UNICEF, so to pledge donors, and also people who engage in global campaigns, for example, when we ask them to sign a petition. So the idea is to aggregate the number of people that take actions in support of the organization, and that will help us to reach 50 million people by 2017. And we're also trying to measure the impact of our brand. So for that, we are looking at people's familiarity, understanding, perception, and behavior towards UNICEF brand equity, and also the perception of UNICEF on various brands and reputation attributes, values that we have identified. And for that, we will be using some brand awareness and indexes. For example, we're working with Win Gallup to develop a barometer that will measure the impact of nonprofits in 64 markets, and that will help us also understand how UNICEF position against other organizations. So finally, we also need to be able to measure or to have the tools to measure all those objectives. And for that, we are developing an integrated media monitoring program. So we sent out an RFP in November last year. It took us only 9 months to find a company that will help us to do that work. As you can imagine, the UN, the procurement process can be a bit slow. We got over 35 proposals, and we interviewed 10 of those companies, and then we have meetings with 5 of those companies. And finally, we identify the company that is offering for us the best value for money. We are working now with the Gorkana Group in developing this global integrated media monitoring program, which is looking at the impact of our communication online, so mainly news online, but also at social media and the web. So the challenge for us is to be able to integrate all of our work, which is not only social media, but also online and offline, into this program and trying to measure the impact of our work. And for that, we are also developing scorecards that we will share with our country offices. We are piloting now the global communication strategy in 16 countries, and the priorities country will be 35. So we are implementing this strategy in 35 countries. And we are hoping that countries will be able to track each of the KPIs and then send information to us in New York. We aggregate all the values, and then every quarter and every year, we are able to report back on the impact. And then finally, which is also very important for us, but also quite challenging, is to be able to measure the impact of our offline activities. So we have a number of campaigns that reach people in very remote areas, and to be able to measure the impact of our communication there and to measure the engagement there is a bit of a challenge, but we are working in also some tools that will help us to measure that. To measure that and aggregate that with the numbers that we get from the online indicators. Thank you very much.
Thanks for hanging in there with us tonight. Thank you. Hey, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, David. I appreciate the invitation. Okay. So I'm Eileen Scheel. Thank you for the shout out for Cleveland. I actually got my Bernese Mountain Dog from Ravenna, very lovely town. I'm going to talk about how the Barcelona Principles can save lives, or at least save a voice. I work in healthcare. Cleveland Clinic is one of the top 4 hospitals in the United States. We specialize in heart care. We're known for heart care, but we do a lot of tertiary care. We did the nation's first face transplant in Cleveland. We also are expanding globally our brand. We are building a hospital in the United Arab Emirates called Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, and expanding our presence in medical education as well in Saudi Arabia, London, Turkey, and soon to be China. So to set this story up a little bit, I think the reason I'm so fascinated with measurement right now is because I don't know how to capitalize or really capture the value of some of these compelling stories about patients and how we can change a life of a patient through medicine. And oftentimes patients hear about what we can do through the media. And we have counterparts on our marketing side who have, over the years, had sophisticated ways of measuring marketing and completely ignored the PR side. So they were taking a lot of credit for marketing and advertising when it was during a time where we weren't advertising at all. So we were trying to figure out the ways to really capture that. So this is a story about a woman, and imagine why I want to know the value, but a woman who lost her voice for 30 years. So this is a story about hope and helping.
Finally tonight, entering a new year with a new voice. This is an amazing story of a woman who lost her voice 30 years ago. Her daughter and grandchild unable to hear her speak up until she saw a story right here on World News and sent word to us, listen to what I can do now. Here's ABC's Lindsay Davis.
Betty Lou Trufant said I do in 1981. The very next year, she came down with a bad cold and lost her voice. But 3 decades later, she could still only muster this raspy whisper.
A voice that I haven't had for 30 years.
Doctors say the virus had paralyzed her vocal cords. Her daughter went from adolescent to adult without ever hearing her mother's real voice.
I don't remember what her voice ever really sounded like.
She'd resigned that she'd live the rest of her life gesturing and whispering. Until one night in May, when she saw a story on ABC World News about Erin Martin, who'd also lost her voice and then received a special kind of throat therapy at the Cleveland Clinic.
Try to relax your throat.
This massage brought her voice back.
I hear my laugh.
That night, Betty Lou also got something back she hadn't had in years, hope. She called the Cleveland Clinic right away and set up an appointment.
I'm going to have a voice. I'm going to be able to yell at you.
When we breathe, the vocal cords are relaxed. We tighten them to speak. Betty Lou's left vocal cord was paralyzed until doctors at the Cleveland Clinic performed the surgery to correct it. Finally, after 30 years, Betty Lou was able to say this.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. And I'm going to cry again.
The crying soon turned to laughter.
I'm going to be singing and dancing real soon. It was just a blessing to get my voice back.
She's not only talking.
Ball number 11.
She's calling the shots. Lindsay Davis, ABC News, New York.
So, you know, understanding the value of this is really important to us. We do know right away that anecdotally we got 650 calls from around the world based on this one story. And what we did is we knew it would probably make an impact, but we didn't know how and how much. So we contacted the call center at the Voice Center, and it's part of our Head and Neck Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. So we did track the calls, but as a communications person with a right brain and not a left brain, I need help, and that's what we're working on. So before measurement, and this has really been a journey for us, we didn't really pay a lot of attention to tracking and really understanding the value. We cared about volume and how many stories we can get in the news, and you'll see a chart that our CEO shows all the time, which you guys are going to come down hard on me for. We had inconsistent messages and numerous topics, and we did a word cloud about the Cleveland Clinic, and every single word popped up, and what we realized is nobody knew who we were. Some people said heart, some people said cancer, some people said, I don't know, there's some hospital in Cleveland. So we had a real shotgun approach, and it was just about volume, and the CEO's expectations were more about the quantity, not the quality. And this is the slide that he shows to our CEO or to our board of trustees, and it basically doesn't say anything, right, except that we get a lot of coverage. And he became CEO in 2004, so he also takes all the credit for it. At the same time, when I was starting out at the Cleveland Clinic about 12 years ago, really public relations was seen as, you know, the spin doctors or, you know, getting the story out. We have 26 institute chairmen who run our heart center, our cancer center, and they're very, they do a lot of clinical research, medical trials, and they really want a lot of media coverage. So it really became more about volume. And we're sort of evolving. You guys know Jerry Garcia, right? I'm not a huge Grateful Dead fan, but working toward measurement is uncomfortable for communications folks. It's even hard to get up here and stand in front of you because I don't know what you do. But we decided that somebody has to do something, and we can't let the marketing department continue to take credit for PR. So we said it's just incredibly pathetic, it has to be us. But since Jerry Garcia is no longer with us, I have to have a new measurement mentor. Sorry, David. But David and I met about 2 years ago when we brought Ketchum on board, and it has been a journey, and I've really learned a lot from him. We're not done yet. We're still working on it, and what we've done, though, we did a lot of reputation research. We developed a Cleveland Clinic narrative because, like I said, we had the shotgun approach. We had stories all over the place, but nobody really knew what our model of care was and why we were different. We did research, too. Who would travel for what care? What kinds of patients would travel and why? Healthcare isn't like selling cookies. We don't know when you're going to need us. If you're young and healthy, you're not looking for a heart surgeon. You might be for your parents. So we really dove deep into like who should we be targeting and with what messages. And we started doing a lot more planning and strategy and goal setting. And we're not there yet, but we're pushing our marketing folks to incorporate PR into measurement. So people will travel for life-changing or life-altering healthcare. They'll change for hope or a second opinion. And specifically, the areas we wanted to research our target market, what would they come for? Transplantation, heart surgery, cancer, brain, complex surgeries. And that's really what our core is. We have the highest acuity of patients at the Cleveland Clinic and the sickest of the sick patients of any hospital in the country. So this is our Barcelona principles. What we're focusing on are really goal setting, getting the right story to the right audience with the right message and the right media outlet. What we found is our younger target market is more social media, and our older population that will come for care and have the means to travel, they're more into traditional media. We're going to measure outcomes, not just outputs. We do a little bit now. We're building our capabilities internally to do that with Ketchum's help, and integrating our marketing teams with our PR measurement. Looking more at business results, like what is the impact on patient volume from this story? What is the impact on national awareness? How do we continue to capture that, not just for one story anecdotally, but the general overall PR coverage? Really leveraging digital and social, make sure we're measuring it, which we're starting to do a little bit more. And then benchmark, and we did a reputation survey where we are now, and we want to continue to do that on an annual basis. So for us, we really focus on outputs. We're now very focused on outcomes, and we're trying to enter into the business results area. So in changing the attitude within your organization is very difficult. AVEs, I learned that's a bad word. But really helping all of our clinical leadership, our CEO, our board, truly understand how we measure PR. What's next is, again, integrating with marketing, building our warehouse database. We're going to start to be able to correlate and look at all the data collectively to see what is driving volume, what's driving revenue, what's driving national awareness or hits to the website, et cetera. And what's the real value of PR versus marketing? And our takeaway, my takeaway, we're supposed to be, is that this is a good time for PR. I think we really want to learn. We want to take it to the next level. We don't know how. We need you to help us guide the way. So thank you. And so the Barcelona Principles can save lives, or at least a voice.
Okay. So hi again. This is the third time that you guys have had to put up with me in a row. And I know it's 6 o'clock and you guys want to go and start drinking. So I'm going to go quickly and not repeat some of the main points that my colleagues have gone through. For those of you who weren't here last year or the year before, CARE International is one of the leading aid agencies. So that basically means that we do long-term development work in poor countries, and we also respond to emergencies. So if any of you guys are from the States, we started with the CARE package. So if any of you ever, when you were in university, got a CARE package from your mom or your dad with cookies or anything like that in it, that's actually us. That started after World War II. And in the States and actually in Canada, they took old meals ready to eat from the army and they put them into boxes and they shipped them over to Europe because people were actually starving at that point. So that's how we were born. And then we've evolved over the years to be doing healthcare, we do education, we do women's empowerment by doing village savings and loans and economic empowerment. So the work that we've done has gotten really sophisticated, but we also still do emergency response. So last year we were also one of, we reached 87 countries, 97 million people, and that's with basic life-saving assistance, but also the whole phrase you've heard before, helping people help themselves. We want to put ourselves out of business, essentially. So we want to give people the tools and help give them the opportunities so that they can go on without us. When it comes to media measurement, yeah, we're not very good at that. We also just saw a benchmarking survey from one of our peer agencies, and they compared a number of different aid agencies, how many comms people we have. And at CARE, typically, our program people have always led the way, and they're like, oh, but we do good work. Why do we have to tell people about it? So we have a fraction, like about 1/5 to our closest competitor, the number of comms people. So that means that with the few people that we have around the world, we need to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. So when I actually saw the Barcelona Principles, for me, I was like, oh, this is fantastic, because this is a way to get our team of comms people around the world being more professional about how we plan our communications work, how we evaluate it, and then how we prove that to the C-suite, as the term we used last year, how we prove that what we do can actually bring in donations, which helps us save lives. So the question, can the Barcelona Principles save lives? The answer is yes, if it helps me and my colleagues do our jobs better, which tells more people that people need help, which brings in donations. So now I need to actually prove that. I'm going to show you, because we started down our media measurement, and we're coming back to David again. We started down our media measurement journey 2 years ago when I was invited to speak. And Andre Manning, who is unfortunately not here right now, stood up and said, I'm going to help you do that. So, and then he told David that that was his responsibility. So David was the one who got stuck with us, and Ben out in the audience, who helped us develop a scoring system and start talking about the Barcelona Principles. So we came back last year and we're like, okay, we're on our way. And then Paul Farrell from Moreover stood up in the back of the room and said, oh, we're going to help you do that. We're going to give you our stuff for free. So Moreover's news desk system, which is fantastic, they've given us for free. And then Mark Den, also from Moreover, said, oh, well, we can help you even further. We're going to give you a cut rate deal on media measurement and analysis. So we're like, okay, we're on our way. So we're in the process. It's painful because for us, this is new. You guys are probably looking at us and shaking your heads, but we're working on it. But we worked with Moreover last year after Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, because up until that point, we would do kind of a survey after each disaster and go, how many media hits did everybody get? Did you use the press releases? And that was it. And then we'd go on and we'd never look at that again. And we didn't look at what it meant and what the number of media hits meant. So we used Moreover to actually do an analysis and compare to our peers. I'm going to show you a short video just because it's the end of the day and you guys need some, yeah, okay, all right.
I'm currently in southern Leyte, a small village roughly 30 kilometers away from Tablucan, which is one of the most affected cities. We came by car and already saw widespread destruction. It's beyond imagination. All the villages we drove through have 80% of their houses destroyed. People are already getting sick because they have no fresh water to drink. They need food. There is no food available, especially in the rural areas. It's very difficult to get through. Medical support is needed, and people need a roof over their head. They all live in the open. They need something to protect themselves from the weather. Aid is slowly getting through, and the local authorities have already distributed rice and other food stock. But what the municipalities are telling us is that they're running out of their stock. And now they really rely on international support. CARE is working here through our local network. We have already worked with communities to protect themselves from the impacts. That means we have helped them evacuate, get to shelters. We are already working on getting shelter items to people so that they could work to build themselves a temporary shelter. With tarpaulins, saws, nails, so something very practical that they could use for building. And CARE will distribute food packages that contain rice and basic food items so that they have something to eat. We as CARE work here through a local network of several organizations, so we are well connected on the ground. We also coordinate with other major humanitarian organizations to ensure that we don't duplicate our efforts, to ensure that we reach all areas and not just concentrate on one. Yes, this has been a very, very massive disaster, but what really strikes me is to come here and to see that people are already getting back on their feet and working hard to rebuild their lives. But they need all the support from us they could get to help them overcome this disaster.
So that's what we do. So in Typhoon Haiyan, we helped 300,000 people, and that was because people donated. And the way that we get information out, I mean, that was somebody sitting in the office using a free software to cut photos, and my colleague who was calling in from a satellite phone just a couple of days after the disaster. So that's like no money being used to develop that, but we need to get our message out, because if people know about us and they know that we're on the ground, then we can actually buy goods that we use to save people's lives. So for us, this is really important. And in emergencies, there's a very short window of opportunity. The media's attention, they'll be paying attention, and then Nelson Mandela will die, for example, and they're on to another story. And that's actually what happened in this case. But if you're looking at the type of work that we need to do it quickly, and we need to do it at a very low cost. So with Moreover, we actually did an analysis of our work. I'll just go through very quickly, we're starting down the same path in terms of our approach, coming up with a global communication strategy for our emergency work, for example. We have an objective. This was set by our emergency team, but that's just an objective. We need to specify what are the goals, what are our target audiences. We started working with Ketchum on that, and we've moved ahead. So that's one thing, is principle one, the importance of goal setting and measurement. This is all basic stuff, but this enables me to go to my boss and say, you want to be one of the first NGOs? I need to send Sandra on a plane now. So yeah, it might not be that bad, but if it's a really big disaster, we need her on the ground the day the disaster hits so that she can actually start telling the story and tell people what's needed. And they said yes. Sandra was on the ground on the first day, and she was one of the most quoted spokespeople in a number of our major markets because she was one of the first people there. So we've also learned a lot about quantity and quality. I won't go into detail, but our colleagues have said the same thing. We used to just cover media hits. We just covered quantity. We weren't measuring any kind of insight, any kind of learnings. So now what we're doing with our analysis is actually looking at, okay, well, so you got, 1,500 media hits in your key markets. What were they? Were they mere mentions? Were your messages getting through? We have a whole bunch of messages. We have competing priorities. We have our program people who are insisting that we focus on the early recovery and people's resilience, which is great and it's important. And then we have our fundraising people who are also saying people need food, water, shelter. We just need to hammer down on the basics. And we're sitting there saying, okay, well, we'll include them all. What we learned, this is what's getting through. These were the 3 top messages, not just for us, but for everybody. So we can go back to our program people, for example, and just say, look, in the first few days, we really just need to tell people that people on the ground need help. That's it. And now they're starting to listen to us. So we can cut through the noise. And then principle number 2, and this is something that we really want to make progress on, because we have anecdotal evidence that shows that news coverage brings in money, which allows us to provide emergency assistance, which allows us to do our long-term development programs on the ground. We haven't been able to link up with our fundraisers yet, but that's our next step, to actually do some kind of follow-up surveys to be able to show, okay, well, if you got that much media coverage, what did it do? Is there any correlation between the day that you got the front page of the New York Times and the day that you got a huge surge in your donations? So these are all kind of our next steps, and that we're hoping that the analysis is going to help us with. So that's kind of the end of mine in summary for the Can Barcelona Principles help? For us, we've already seen that it's actually helping target. We don't have very many communications people because we use our money to actually help people. And that means that we need to use whatever people and whatever resources we have the most effectively as we can. And the best way that we can do that is by following the Barcelona Principles, learning from everything that we do and doing it better and doing it faster and doing it more effectively. So if done right, yeah, I think they can help save lives.
Thank you.
I'm thinking they are doing an impressive job, considering the limited budgets NGOs most of the time have. We work for Greenpeace, so we know a little bit about your situation, and yeah, I think you're doing an excellent job. But don't use the word AVE.
Then, given the time, and I thank you all for staying the extra little bit, and I'm sorry we had this last-minute change in terms of what this was supposed to be the wrap-up for tomorrow and what was the wrap-up of today. But I thought this was a particularly important panel, and I hope you felt that too. I mean, you heard a connection. We get together as an industry once a year. We talk mainly about how to build our industry. I hope you heard a different perspective, that it isn't only about building our industry. It's about the 70 women in Scotland that Alex Aiken mentioned. It's about people after a typhoon, the woman who lost her voice, saving kids around the world from dying of diarrhea, basically. 50 million people taking action on behalf of children's rights. So I hope you heard that and heard that link to our industry. Thank you. Thank the panel for your flexibility very much.